Marcus Chen had always been proud of his black belt in karate. At 28 years old, he owned 3 martial arts studios across the city and had won dozens of tournaments. His students looked up to him, and his Instagram followers loved watching his impressive kicks and punches. Marcus believed he was unstoppable, and this confidence had slowly turned into arrogance over the years. On a sunny Tuesday morning, Marcus decided to visit the famous Buckingham Palace during his vacation in London. He had saved money for months to make this trip, and seeing the royal guards was at the top of his list. Marcus packed his camera, wore his favorite black belt around his casual clothes, and headed out with excitement. The palace grounds were crowded with tourists from all over the world. Families took selfies, children pointed at the tall guards, and everyone seemed amazed by the grand building. Marcus walked around, taking photos and videos for his social media. He noticed how still and professional the royal guard stood, dressed in their bright red uniforms and tall black hats. As Marcus got closer to one of the guards, he had what he thought was a brilliant idea. He remembered seeing videos online where tourists tried to make the guards react and most failed. Marcus thought this would be the perfect opportunity to show off his martial arts skills and create viral content for his social media accounts. He pulled out his phone and started recording a video. "Hey everyone, Marcus here in London at Buckingham Palace," he said to his camera. "You know me, I never back down from a challenge. Let's see if I can get one of these guards to move." He pointed the camera toward the nearest royal guard, who stood perfectly still like a statue. Marcus moved closer to the guard, still recording. The guard was a tall, muscular man who looked to be in his 30s. His face showed no expression and his eyes stared straight ahead. Marcus waved his hand in front of the guard's face but got no reaction. Other tourists started gathering around, curious about what Marcus was planning to do. "This guy won't budge," Marcus said to his camera, laughing, "but I bet I know what will get his attention." Marcus stepped back and got into his fighting stance. He had performed this routine hundreds of times in his studio and at competitions. It was a series of high kicks that always impressed people. Marcus started with some basic moves, throwing punches in the air and doing small kicks. The crowd grew bigger and people started taking their own videos. Marcus felt the attention and decided to make his moves more dramatic. He jumped higher, kicked faster, and made loud sounds with each move. The royal guard continued to stand perfectly still, showing no sign that he even noticed Marcus. This frustrated Marcus because he was used to people being impressed by his skills. He decided he needed to do something more extreme to get a reaction. Marcus looked around at all the phones recording him and smiled. This was going to be his biggest viral moment yet. He took several steps back to give himself room for his most impressive move, a jumping, spinning kick that he had perfected over years of training. This kick required perfect timing, balance, and control. "Watch this, everyone," Marcus announced loudly. "This is a move that took me 5 years to master." He ran forward, jumped high into the air, and spun his body around. His leg extended in a perfect kick that was aimed to stop just inches from the guard's head. It was meant to be impressive but harmless, but something went wrong. Maybe it was the excitement, the crowd, or the unfamiliar ground beneath his feet. As Marcus spun through the air, he lost control of his distance and timing. Instead of stopping safely away from the guard, his foot connected directly with the side of the royal guard's head. The impact was solid and loud. The guard stumbled sideways, his tall hat falling to the ground. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The crowd gasped, phones kept recording, and Marcus landed awkwardly on the ground, realizing immediately what he had just done. The guard quickly regained his balance and turned to look directly at Marcus for the first time. His eyes were cold and angry. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he saw the serious expression on the guard's face. This was no longer a fun tourist moment. This had become something much more serious. Marcus scrambled to his feet, his face turning red with embarrassment and fear. "I'm so sorry," he started to say, but his words felt small and useless. The crowd around him had gone from excited to shocked. Some people were still recording, but others were backing away, sensing that something bad was about to happen. The royal guard picked up his hat and placed it back on his head, never taking his eyes off Marcus. Other guards nearby had noticed the commotion and were starting to move in their direction. Marcus realized that his moment of showing off had just turned into the biggest mistake of his life. Within seconds of Marcus kicking the royal guard, everything around him changed dramatically. The guard he had hit blew a sharp whistle that pierced through the air. Marcus had never heard such a loud, urgent sound before, and it made his heart race even faster than it already was. More guards appeared from different directions, moving quickly but in perfect formation. Marcus counted at least 6 guards surrounding him, and he could see more coming from the palace entrance. These weren't just ceremonial guards standing still. They moved like trained soldiers, which Marcus suddenly remembered they actually were. "Sir, you need to come with us immediately," said the guard Marcus had kicked. His voice was deep and commanding, with a British accent that sounded much more serious than Marcus had expected. The guard's professional tone made Marcus realize this wasn't going to be handled like a simple tourist mistake. Marcus looked around desperately at the crowd of people still watching and recording. He hoped someone would speak up for him, maybe explain that it was just an accident. But the tourists were keeping their distance now, and many were putting their phones away as they sensed the seriousness of the situation. "Wait, please," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "It was completely accidental. I'm a martial artist, and I was just trying to show off some moves. I never meant to actually hit you. I have perfect control usually, but something went wrong with my kick." The guards didn't seem interested in his explanation. 2 of them stepped closer to Marcus, 1 on each side. They were both taller and broader than Marcus, despite all his years of training and muscle building. Marcus realized that these men were trained for real combat situations, not tournament fighting. "Sir, we need you to place your hands behind your back," ordered another guard. Marcus saw that this guard had more decorations on his uniform, suggesting he was in charge. His voice was calm but firm, leaving no room for argument. Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. "This is insane," he thought to himself. "I'm going to be arrested in a foreign country for a stupid mistake." He looked at his hands, which were still shaking from adrenaline. The idea of being handcuffed and taken away terrified him more than any martial arts competition ever had. "Please, can't we just talk about this?" Marcus pleaded. "I can pay for any medical bills if he's hurt. I can delete the video. I'll do whatever you want, but please don't arrest me. I'm supposed to fly home in 3 days." The senior guard stepped forward, his expression unchanged. "Sir, you have just assaulted a member of Her Majesty's Guard at a royal residence. This is a serious criminal offense under British law. You will be taken into custody immediately, and the proper authorities will handle your case." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The word criminal hit him like a punch to the stomach. He had never been in trouble with the law before, not even a speeding ticket. His martial arts training had always taught him discipline and respect, but his arrogance had made him forget those lessons at the worst possible moment. As the guards moved to handcuff him, Marcus's mind raced through all the terrible consequences he was about to face. His students back home would see this on social media. His reputation as a martial arts instructor would be destroyed. His 3 studios might lose students and go out of business. His family would be embarrassed and worried sick about him. The handcuffs clicked into place around Marcus's wrists, and the cold metal against his skin made everything feel terrifyingly real. The guards began walking him toward a side entrance of the palace that Marcus hadn't noticed before. His legs felt weak and he struggled to keep up with their steady pace. As they walked, Marcus could hear tourists behind him talking in different languages. He caught bits of English from some of them. "Did you see that?" What was he thinking? He actually kicked the guard. Marcus realized that dozens of people had recorded his mistake, and those videos would probably be online within hours. The guards led Marcus through the side entrance and down a long corridor inside the palace. The walls were lined with portraits of royal family members, and Marcus felt like their painted eyes were judging him for his stupidity. The corridor seemed to go on forever, and each step took him further away from any hope of this being resolved quickly. They stopped in front of a heavy wooden door marked Security Office. The senior guard knocked twice, and a voice from inside called out, "Come in." As the door opened, Marcus saw a small room with a desk, several chairs, and what looked like monitoring equipment showing camera feeds from around the palace grounds. Behind the desk sat a woman in a police uniform. She looked up at Marcus with a serious expression and gestured for the guards to bring him forward. "I'm Inspector Williams with the Metropolitan Police," she said. "I understand you've had an incident with one of our guards." Marcus tried to speak, but his mouth felt dry. The reality of his situation was becoming clearer by the minute. This wasn't just going to be a warning or a simple apology. He was about to enter the British legal system as a defendant in a criminal case, and he had no idea what that meant for his future. Inspector Williams gestured for Marcus to sit in a chair across from her desk. The handcuffs were removed, but 2 guards remained standing by the door. Marcus rubbed his wrists where the metal had pressed against his skin and tried to calm his racing heart. "State your full name and nationality," Inspector Williams said, pulling out a notepad and pen. Her voice was professional but not unkind, which gave Marcus a tiny bit of hope that maybe this situation could still be resolved reasonably. "Marcus Chen, American citizen," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I live in Los Angeles, California. I'm here on vacation." The words felt strange coming out of his mouth, as if he was talking about someone else's life. Inspector Williams wrote down his information and then looked up at him directly. "Mr. Chen, you are being charged with assault on a royal guard and disturbing the peace at a protected royal residence. These are serious charges under British law. Do you understand what this means?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "Not really. I mean, I know it's bad, but I don't understand the British legal system. In America, maybe this would just be a misdemeanor or something you'd get community service for." "This isn't America, Mr. Chen," Inspector Williams replied firmly. "Assault on a royal guard can carry a sentence of up to 2 years in prison, plus significant fines. Disturbing the peace at a royal residence adds additional penalties. You could also be banned from entering the UK for up to 10 years. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. 2 years in prison. Banned from the UK. These consequences were far beyond anything he had imagined when he decided to show off his kicks. He thought about his girlfriend Sarah back home, who was planning to visit him next month. He thought about his students who depended on him for their training and guidance. "There has to be something I can do," Marcus said desperately. "I'll pay whatever fine you want. I'll make a public apology. I'll donate money to charity. Please, I can't go to prison for this." Inspector Williams continued writing in her notepad. "Mr. Chen, the legal process has already begun. You will be held overnight while we prepare the formal charges. Tomorrow morning you will appear before a magistrate who will determine if you can be released on bail while awaiting trial." The word overnight made Marcus's stomach turn. He had never spent a night in jail, and the thought of being locked in a cell terrified him. "Can I call someone? My girlfriend, or maybe the American embassy?" "You'll be allowed 1 phone call after we finish the booking process," Inspector Williams said. "However, I should warn you that embassy assistance in criminal matters is limited. They can provide you with a list of local lawyers and ensure you're treated fairly, but they cannot get the charges dropped." Marcus felt tears starting to form in his eyes, but he tried to hold them back. Crying wouldn't help his situation, and he needed to stay strong enough to figure out how to handle this mess. He thought about all the times he had taught his students about self-control and thinking before acting. He had failed to follow his own advice in the worst possible way. Inspector Williams stood up and walked around the desk to face Marcus directly. "Mr. Chen, I want to be clear with you about something. The guard you kicked, Sergeant Thompson, is a decorated military veteran who served 3 tours in Afghanistan. He's been a Royal Guard for 8 years without a single incident. He's also a husband and father of 2 young children." This information made Marcus feel even worse. He had imagined the guards as just ceremonial figures, not real people with families and military backgrounds. "Is he okay? Did I hurt him badly?" Marcus asked, genuinely worried about the man he had kicked. "Sergeant Thompson has a bruised jaw and will need to see a doctor, but he refused medical attention until his shift was over. That's the kind of dedicated professional you assaulted today," Inspector Williams said sternly. Marcus buried his face in his hands. Every detail he learned made his actions seem more terrible. He wasn't just some tourist who made a silly mistake. He was a trained martial artist who had used his skills to hurt a dedicated public servant. "The media has already picked up the story," Inspector Williams continued. "Videos of the incident are spreading on social media platforms. Several news outlets have contacted us for comments. This is becoming a high-profile case, which means the courts will likely want to make an example of you." Marcus looked up in horror. "What do you mean, make an example?" "Tourist incidents at royal sites have been increasing over the past few years," she explained. "People doing dangerous things for social media content. The legal system wants to send a clear message that this behavior won't be tolerated. Your case might receive a harsher sentence than normal to deter others from similar actions." Marcus felt like the walls of the small office were closing in on him. Not only was he facing serious criminal charges, but he might become a cautionary tale used to scare other tourists. His moment of arrogance had snowballed into a situation that could destroy his entire life. Inspector Williams returned to her desk and picked up a phone. "I'm calling for transport to take you to the holding facility. You'll spend tonight there, and tomorrow morning you'll be taken to court. I strongly advise you to use your phone call to contact a criminal defense lawyer rather than your girlfriend. You're going to need professional legal help." As Marcus heard her making the arrangements, he realized that his vacation in London was over, but his legal nightmare was just beginning. The holding cell at the police station was nothing like what Marcus had seen in movies. It was a small, clean room with white walls, a narrow bed, and a toilet in the corner. The fluorescent light above hummed constantly, and there were no windows. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor and trying to process everything that had happened. He had used his one phone call to contact a lawyer recommended by the duty sergeant. The lawyer, Mr. David Harrison, had agreed to meet with Marcus first thing in the morning before his court appearance. The conversation had been brief and expensive. Mr. Harrison charged £400 per hour, and Marcus had agreed to pay a £2,000 retainer just to get started. Sleep was impossible. Every time Marcus closed his eyes, he saw the moment his foot connected with Sergeant Thompson's head. He replayed the incident over and over, wondering what he could have done differently. The confident martial artist who had walked into Buckingham Palace that morning felt like a different person entirely. Around midnight, Marcus heard footsteps in the corridor outside his cell. A guard appeared at the small window in the door and slid a newspaper through the slot at the bottom. "Thought you might want to see this," the guard said, not unkindly. Marcus picked up the newspaper with shaking hands. On the front page was a large photo of him mid-kick, his foot about to connect with Sergeant Thompson's head. The headline read, "American Tourist Attacks Royal Guard in Shocking Palace Incident." Below the photo was a smaller headline, "Martial Arts Instructor Faces 2 years in Prison." The article described Marcus as a reckless American tourist, seeking social media fame, and detailed his background as a karate instructor with 3 studios. Somehow, reporters had already found his Instagram account and quoted some of his more boastful posts about his martial arts skills. The article made him sound like an arrogant show-off who had deliberately attacked a guard for attention. What made it worse was that the article was accurate about his personality, even if it misrepresented his intentions. Marcus had to admit to himself that he had been arrogant in seeking attention. The only difference was that he never meant to actually hit anyone. The newspaper also included an interview with a tourist who had witnessed the incident. "He was clearly showing off for the cameras," the witness said. "He kept telling everyone to watch him and talking about how skilled he was. When his first moves didn't get the guard's attention, he decided to do something more extreme. It was completely irresponsible." Marcus folded the newspaper and set it aside, feeling sick to his stomach. The public narrative about him was already set, and it painted him as the villain in the story. He wondered what his students back home would think when they saw this coverage. Many of them looked up to him as a role model and mentor. His phone, which had been returned to him in the cell, buzzed with notifications throughout the night. Text messages from friends and family who had seen the news. Missed calls from reporters wanting interviews. Messages from concerned students asking if the news stories were true. Marcus couldn't bring himself to read most of them. One message stood out, though. It was from his girlfriend, Sarah. "Marcus, what happened? The news is saying you attacked someone. I'm so confused and scared. Please call me when you can. I love you, but I need to understand what's going on." Marcus typed and deleted several responses, but nothing he wrote seemed adequate. How could he explain that his ego and need for attention had led him to make the stupidest decision of his life? How could he tell the woman he loved that he might be going to prison because he couldn't resist showing off? As the night wore on, Marcus began to understand the true scope of what he was facing. This wasn't just about legal consequences. His entire reputation was being destroyed in real time. His martial arts schools might lose students. His relationship with Sarah might not survive. His family would be embarrassed and worried. Around 4 a.m., Marcus finally dozed off for a few hours. He dreamed about teaching his students, but in the dream, they all walked out of his class when he tried to demonstrate a kick. He woke up feeling more exhausted than when he had tried to sleep. At 7 a.m., a guard brought Marcus breakfast and told him to get ready for his court appearance. As Marcus ate the simple meal of toast and tea, he tried to prepare himself mentally for what was coming. He had never been in a courtroom before, and he had no idea what to expect. An hour later, Mr. Harrison arrived at the police station. He was a well-dressed man in his 50s with gray hair and a serious expression. He carried a leather briefcase and spoke with the confidence of someone who had handled many criminal cases. "Mr. Chen," he said as they sat in a small meeting room, "I've reviewed the evidence against you, including the video footage. I'll be honest with you, this is not going to be easy to defend. The incident was clearly recorded from multiple angles, and your actions were obviously intentional, even if you didn't mean to make contact." Marcus nodded miserably. "What are my options?" "We can try to negotiate a plea agreement," Mr. Harrison explained. "If you plead guilty to a lesser charge, you might avoid prison time and just face fines, community service, and deportation. However, you would have a criminal record, and the guilty plea could affect your ability to travel internationally in the future." "And if I don't take a plea?" Marcus asked. "Then we go to trial and you risk the full penalties if you're convicted. Given the video evidence and the current political climate around tourist behavior at royal sites, I'd estimate your chances of acquittal at less than 10%. Marcus felt the weight of his situation settling on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. No matter what choice he made, his life was going to be permanently changed by those few seconds of poor judgment at Buckingham Palace. The courtroom was smaller than Marcus had expected, but it felt intimidating nonetheless. He sat next to Mr. Harrison at a wooden table, wearing the same clothes he had on when he was arrested the day before. His hands were folded in his lap, and he tried to sit up straight despite feeling like he wanted to disappear. The magistrate, Judge Margaret Foster, was a stern-looking woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through Marcus. She had been handling criminal cases for over 20 years, and her expression suggested she had little patience for tourists who caused trouble at royal sites. "Mr. Chen," Judge Foster began, looking at the papers in front of her, "you are charged with assault on a royal guard and disturbing the peace at a protected royal residence. How do you plead to these charges?" Mr. Harrison stood up. "Your Honor, my client pleads guilty to the charge of disturbing the peace, but we contest the assault charge. Mr. Chen is a trained martial artist who lost control during what was intended to be a harmless demonstration. The contact with the guard was accidental." Judge Foster raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Harrison, I have watched the video evidence multiple times. Your client performed a deliberate kicking motion directed at the guard's head. Whether he intended to make contact or not, the action itself was reckless and resulted in injury to the guard." Marcus felt his heart sinking. Even his own lawyer's arguments sounded weak in the formal courtroom setting. The judge clearly wasn't buying the accidental explanation, and Marcus couldn't blame her. Watching the video objectively, his actions did look intentional and aggressive. The prosecutor, a sharp-dressed woman named Ms. Rachel Stewart, stood to present the case against Marcus. She spoke clearly and confidently, laying out the facts in a way that made Marcus sound like a dangerous individual who had deliberately attacked a public servant. "Your Honor," Ms. Stewart said, "Mr. Chen is a trained martial artist with a black belt who chose to perform aggressive movements inches away from a guard's head. He continued escalating his behavior even when it was clear the guard was not responding to his earlier attempts at provocation. This was not a moment of poor judgment, it was a calculated decision to use his martial arts, training in a threatening manner at one of Britain's most important national landmarks. Marcus wanted to stand up and explain that it really was just a mistake, that he would never intentionally hurt someone for no reason. But Mr. Harrison had told him to remain quiet unless directly asked to speak by the judge. So Stewart continued, "The defendant operates 3 martial arts schools in Los Angeles, where he teaches others how to fight. He regularly posts videos on social media showcasing his abilities and encouraging others to follow his example. This incident represents exactly the kind of reckless tourist behavior that puts our security personnel at risk and damages Britain's reputation as a safe destination for international visitors." Judge Foster nodded as she listened to the prosecutor's arguments. Marcus could tell that the judge was taking the case seriously, and he began to realize that his hopes for a lenient sentence might be unrealistic. "Your Honor," Mr. Harrison said when it was his turn to speak, "my client deeply regrets his actions and the injury caused to Sergeant Thompson. Mr. Chen has no prior criminal record in any country and has spent his adult life teaching discipline and respect through martial arts. This incident represents a single moment of poor judgment that he would do anything to take back. Judge Foster looked directly at Marcus for the first time. Mr. Chen, do you have anything you would like to say before I determine your sentence? Marcus stood up slowly, his legs feeling unsteady. He had practiced what he wanted to say, but now that the moment was here, his mind felt blank. Your Honor, he began, his voice shaking. I am truly sorry for what I did. I never meant to hurt Sergeant Thompson, and I feel terrible that my stupid mistake caused him pain and embarrassment. He paused, trying to gather his thoughts. I've been teaching martial arts for 10 years, and I've always taught my students to be respectful and controlled. I failed to follow my own teachings, and I understand why that makes my actions even worse. I know saying sorry doesn't undo what I did, but I want Sergeant Thompson and his family to know that I never intended any harm. Marcus sat back down, feeling emotionally drained. Judge Foster made some notes and then looked up at both legal teams. This case represents a troubling trend of tourists engaging in reckless behavior at royal sites for social media attention, Judge Foster said. Mr. Chen, your actions were irresponsible and dangerous regardless of your intentions. However, I do believe that you are genuinely remorseful and that this behavior is out of character for you. Marcus held his breath, waiting for the sentence that would determine his immediate future. I am sentencing you to 6 months in prison, suspended for 2 years, meaning you will not serve prison time unless you commit another offense during that period. You will pay a fine of £5,000 to be donated to a charity supporting military veterans. You will also pay £2,000 in compensation to Sergeant Thompson for his medical expenses and time off work. Marcus felt relief wash over him. No immediate prison time, but Judge Foster wasn't finished. Additionally, you are banned from entering the United Kingdom for a period of 5 years. You will be deported immediately following this hearing and will not be permitted to return until 2030. Any attempt to enter the UK during this period will result in immediate arrest and imprisonment. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. 5 years banned from the UK. His dream of traveling through Europe was over. Any future business opportunities or personal relationships involving Britain were impossible for the next 5 years of his life. 3 months had passed since Marcus returned to Los Angeles, and the consequences of his actions in London continued to affect every aspect of his life. The viral videos of his incident at Buckingham Palace had been viewed millions of times across different social media platforms, and Marcus had become an unwanted internet celebrity known as the American tourist who kicked a royal guard. His 3 martial arts studios had suffered significant damage to their reputation. Parents pulled their children out of classes after seeing news reports about their instructor's arrest. Adult students questioned whether they wanted to learn from someone who had shown such poor judgment and lack of self-control. Marcus had to lay off 2 of his assistant instructors and reduce the hours at one location due to declining enrollment. The financial penalties from his court case had also taken a serious toll. The £5,000 fine, £2,000 in compensation, and Mr. Harrison's legal fees had cost him over $12,000 when converted to American currency. Combined with the lost income from his struggling studios, Marcus had been forced to sell his car and move to a smaller apartment. His relationship with Sarah had been rocky, but had ultimately survived. She had been angry and embarrassed by the incident initially, but she stuck by Marcus as he dealt with the consequences. However, their planned trip to Europe the following year was canceled, and Sarah had to accept that her boyfriend was now banned from an entire country. The most difficult part for Marcus was dealing with the damage to his reputation in the martial arts community. Videos of the incident were often used in online discussions about the importance of self-control and humility in martial arts training. Marcus had become an example of what not to do, a cautionary tale shared among instructors and students worldwide. Despite all these challenges, the experience had forced Marcus to confront his own personality in ways he had never done before. He realized that his confidence had crossed the line into arrogance years ago, and that his need for attention and validation had been driving many of his decisions. The humiliation of becoming internationally known for his poor judgment had been a harsh but necessary wake-up call. Marcus began attending therapy sessions to work on his ego and impulse control issues. His therapist helped him understand that his martial arts skills had made him feel superior to others, and that this sense of superiority had led him to take increasingly dangerous risks to prove his abilities. The incident in London was just the most extreme example of a pattern of behavior that had been building for years. Slowly, Marcus started to rebuild his life and his businesses with a completely different approach. Instead of promoting himself as an unbeatable fighter who could handle any challenge, he began teaching his students about humility, respect, and the importance of thinking before acting. He shared his own story as an example of how martial arts training meant nothing without wisdom and self-control. The new approach resonated with many students and parents. Word spread that Marcus Chen had learned from his mistake and was now teaching valuable life lessons alongside martial arts techniques. Enrollment at his studios began to slowly increase as people appreciated his honesty about his failures and his commitment to personal growth. Marcus also started a blog called Lessons from London, where he wrote about his experience and the importance of checking one's ego before making decisions. The blog became popular among martial artists and other people who had made public mistakes and were trying to rebuild their lives. Marcus discovered that sharing his story honestly helped other people avoid similar poor decisions. On the 1-year anniversary of the incident, Marcus received an unexpected email. It was from Sergeant Thompson, the Royal Guard he had kicked. The email was brief but significant. "Mr. Chen, I wanted to let you know that I have been following your efforts to learn from what happened between us. I appreciate your public acknowledgement of the mistake and your work to help others avoid similar incidents. My injury healed completely within a few weeks, and I harbor no personal ill will toward you. I hope you continue to grow from this experience and wish you the best in your future endeavors. Respectfully, Sergeant James Thompson." Reading the email brought tears to Marcus's eyes. The forgiveness from the man he had wronged meant more to him than any martial arts trophy he had ever won. It also gave him hope that redemption was possible, even after making such a public and serious mistake. Marcus printed out the email and hung it in his office at his main studio. Next to it, he placed a photo of himself from the day he earned his black belt, smiling proudly and full of confidence. Looking at the two items together reminded him daily of the journey he had taken from arrogance to humility, and the importance of never forgetting the lessons he had learned the hard way. 5 years would eventually pass, and Marcus would be allowed to return to the UK. But by then, he would be a completely different person, one who understood that true strength came not from what you could do to others, but from the wisdom to know when not to do it at all. The black belt who kicked a Royal Guard had learned the most valuable lesson of his martial arts career. Sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when not to fight.